The whole time he's saying people should just believe facts and logic and stop using their feelings to think about things. Feelings shouldn't be more important than facts and logic. But he's denying facts and logic because of his feelings the entire time. Sassafras the last like 2 Thursdays in a row has been like, wow, you're on early. That's every Thursday. I'm on early. I get on at like 4 or 5 o'clock most Thursdays. And this last Thursday I got on at 8 o'clock. She's like, wow, this is early. Like, actually, I'm like 3 hours late. I'm on the computer now, Freddie. Explain to me why rhetoric isn't BS. Okay. All right, jump in. All right, so I don't understand how you can ask that question when you literally asked that question right after I finished saying people use rhetoric all the time, whether they recognize it or not. You're going to talk differently when you're around your mom or your dad than you are when you're around your friends. And you're going to talk differently around your friends and your mom and your dad than you are when you're around your boss. And you're going to talk differently around your boss than you are when you're around, like there's so many different types of rhetoric that we use because we want to be viewed in a certain light. And so we use rhetoric all the time, whether we recognize it or not. Like, you know how there are times
That's
where
not what
people
rhetoric is to me. Like,
rhetoric
that's
is
just talking to people. Like,
no, but that is
rhetoric is
Rhetoric,
rhetoric is very specific. It's the way you use words for to convince someone of your position on something.
not of your position. It's the art of being persuasive with language. That is rhetoric. So, not to convince someone of your position, it's just to convince someone. So, if you want to give a certain perception of yourself, you are still convincing them of something, not of a position, but of something. Now, there are people out there who will say things like, clothes are rhetoric, right? Like if you wear a suit on your stream versus a wife beater, your clothes are also rhetoric because you're giving a certain perception that is supposed to be convincing of what the way that you want to be perceived. I don't agree with that. I think rhetoric is specific to just language. It's a common debate. I don't get into it. I just say, look, I think it's just language. But all in all, rhetoric is to be persuasive. That's it. Not of a position, not of anything specific. It's just being persuasive. So, like, I learned rhetoric because I was working for a law firm in a sales department for okay. So I was working in a sales department, and what I was doing was helping them be more persuasive in the ways that they were trying to sell people on mortgage. And it was actually, they were called mortgage consultants, but all they were just salesmen that, dude, something's wrong with this. It's blacking out. So yeah, all I was doing was trying to help them word things in a better way, to where they would be more persuasive with selling people on on refinancing their houses or using a lawyer to refinance their houses. So, like, especially in politics, right? Most of us get into streaming politics because we want to convince people of our position, um, of the positions that we believe in, right? Like, that's why we get into it. We want people to believe the same thing as us. We think we're right. We think they're wrong. So we get into politics to convince people. Well, if you want to be convincing, you need to use convincing rhetoric. So, especially in this field that we're in, we need rhetoric. It needs to be a very important component to us. Um, so, like, lots of times people will say things to me like, Tom, how is it that you teach rhetoric yet you say the most outlandish things on a consistent basis to where you can get clipped out of context and look horrible? That's actually rhetoric as well. I People enjoy somebody who's not only funny but somewhat edgy, who's not afraid to say things um, that are controversial. That's not just rhetoric for me. That's also just who I am in general, and so it's pretty natural for me. Um, but like in
All
order
right.
to gain viewers, like
Yeah.
that's a something that is attractive to people. So I'm willing to say things that are controversial because I know that it like people's ears perk up. They'll listen more because this is a subject that they haven't heard much. The motto of this channel is challenge your thoughts. So I'm going to go over controversial subjects all the time. But my point is like, I'm not bad at rhetoric just because I say things that are perceived as taboo. Like, that's actually my rhetoric working well if you believe that it's that this is something that's off limits or something like that.
It sounds to me like you're kind of defining rhetoric into oblivion because, like, um, it's almost like you're saying that it's just like the use of language to be persuasive.
That
And
is what it is. Look it up on Google. That's exactly what it's going to tell you is
so,
the
what isn't rhetoric then? Is there anything that's
most
not rhetoric?
so you're always using some sort of rhetoric. That doesn't mean you're doing it on purpose. That doesn't mean that it's that it like I would say that like the difference most of the time is the art behind it. This is turning on and off right now. I don't know.
Oh, I like the second definition more, to be honest.
What's the second definition?
Language designed to have a persuasive or impressive effect on its audience, but often regarded as lacking in sincerity or meaningful content.
What?
Yeah,
Lacking in sincerity or
or meaningful
meaningful content?
content. Yes, and this
Why?
because I find all too often, especially like in this little politics community we've got here, that when people don't know what the fuck they're talking about, they fall back on some rhetorical like methodology to try and come across as if they either know what they're talking about or that they're right, you know? Like this is what frustrates me.
Yeah. Um I mean, but that's more of a problem of just like being irresponsible. Like that doesn't mean that because people fall back to rhetoric that now rhetoric is bad.
I think if someone is relying on rhetoric to make their point,
Mm-hmm.
then they're doing a bad job of making their point.
That's not true. It's if it's the art of being convincing or being persuasive and the point is to persuade people, then you need rhetoric. It's necessary.
I think if you have the facts on your side and you have a well-reasoned argument, you're not using rhetoric, you're just using facts and logic.
Sure, but that's not how it actually works in reality. People aren't convinced by facts and logic. Like, Nazis exist, socialists
Yes.
exist. Like, these things exist. If you want to be pragmatic about it, you have to recognize that none of those things matter in reality. Now, hopefully, the right people are using rhetoric to lead people to the right positions, and that's the hope. But if you are planning on just saying the truth and people will know it when they hear it, then you're not cut out for this. Like, it you can't you can't expect that of people, and you will get nowhere with that sort of like idealistic thought process. You have to be more pragmatic about it and say, okay, in reality, that's not how things work. In reality, humans are fickle beings and they're convinced by weird things, and I need to use weird things to convince them of the right positions so that they are right in the end. Like, even you right now, you have a weird position about rhetoric, right? I find it odd. Um, I have to make my argument in a number of different ways until I feel like you understand, but also until I feel like you're convinced, right?
It's just like, ugh.
Like, I get the issue with people using rhetoric um, is frustrating because they're using it irresponsibly. But that's like saying, in order to convince people, people have to talk and use words. And because they talk and use words to lie to people, now I think that talking and using words is bad, right? Like, using rhetoric can be used for good just as often, if not more often, than it's used for bad. It's just up to us to use it for good. Like, the rhetoric itself isn't something that's actually bad.
I just I just consider it bad when someone, like, if someone comes to me with an argument that's purely rhetorical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm immediately like just discounting them and their opinion, right? Because they've got nothing of substance
Yeah, of course,
to
but
offer.
rhetoric should only be like one component of a puzzle. Like, even having the facts or getting things right is only one component as well. Um like if I don't have an audience to listen or to hear what it is that I'm saying, then like what it is I'm saying is kind of useless at that point, right? Like, there are lots of components to to this stuff, and you come into this space, so I assume you want to convince people of your ideas, so you're using rhetoric as well. You're just against people using rhetoric without the facts, whereas why not just use rhetoric with the facts? Like, why be against rhetoric? Why not just be against rhetoric that's incorrect?
Um, because I I I don't think I really don't consider a well-reasoned argument backed up by, empirical evidence to be rhetorical.
It's not, it has nothing to do with, I'm not, whether or not it's well reasoned, you've already admitted, doesn't mean that you're actually going to convince people of it, though. If the goal is to convince them of the well reasoned argument, like you can have all the well reasoned arguments you want. If you're not convincing anybody of it, then it doesn't actually matter. You ever heard perception is reality? Okay, so like perception is 100% reality. Like for sure, it is. There's, well, kind of. Like you can't, we've been over this sort of thing. Like there's a whole lot that you just can't prove. Like nothing is proven beyond a matter of a doubt. So if all of us believe that there's only two genders, then in that moment there's only two genders, right? Like there there is no changing that. Later on, once we're all convinced that maybe there's more than two genders, or gender is a spectrum and it's not binary or something like that, then all of that changes because our perception has changed. I think that this has more substance and that people who haven't really thought about it much will will feel as though it doesn't have substance. But like if you actually spend a long time thinking about it, like it's just it's just kind of the way things are. Like there's not much we can do about it. People aren't convinced. Um if everybody doesn't believe it, then it doesn't make much of a difference, does it? Well, I don't even think you're being overly scientific, like maybe about the last part, but I think the rest of it you're moralizing. Why do you think being chat can't hear you? Why did it switch? All right, talk.
Uh, Hello, chat. Can you hear me
Okay,
now?
there we go. Um, the why do you think being right, like why should people believe in it just because it's right?
Oh, I've had this argument with someone before. Um, if a claim is backed up by empirical evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not that I require you to consider it right. I want you uh to I want you to either um do your own experiment and figure out and find the empirical evidence that uh like if you can't if you've been how do I say this? If you've been if you've been brought the empirical evidence to support a hypothesis and you can't or have failed to refute that hypothesis with your own empirical evidence, then I'm not saying that you should then consider that hypothesis to be 100% correct. You should consider it to be supported.
Okay. So let's say um there's a whole lot of evidence to show that black people are the same as white people. Yet
Okay.
if I come out and say, hey, I think black people are the same as us and we should all be treated equally, yet it'll get me ostracized within my community. Nobody will respect me anymore. Nobody will listen to me anymore. and I'll lose any chance of ever convincing anyone of anything ever again. What value does that have to me? What value does being right have to me?
I mean, um, in the social sphere, clearly in that particular in the social sphere of that particular community, being right has negative value, right?
Mm-hmm. But
Um,
that is most cases. Like,
it's
especially in
it's
politics, when most things are ideologically valued and most people believe things based on where they grew up and their family and their surroundings. Like, they're they believe what their in group believes, right? So I have to believe that what it is you're telling me is actually good for me to believe. Not just that it's right, but that it's actually has some value to believing it. Because if being right doesn't have value, then there has to be other
oh, being
value
right has
attached to it.
value.
Not in all cases, though. In some
Okay,
cases,
but
there is
okay, there
absolutely
is
no
there
value.
is there is an intrinsic value to
What is that intrinsic value?
hold up, I'm not done yet. There's an intrinsic value in having a hypothesis be backed up by empirical evidence. And if it's backed up by enough empirical evidence, then you can call it a theory. And that and that is how this is how science figures out what's right and wrong, right? And like we have the mechanism of peer review and other such things to try and improve the quality of that empirical value as much as possible. And like, I'm a scientist and I have a scientific worldview, right? Not a political one. So when someone like you asks me what's the value in being right, like I don't know like what you mean by that, because being right, well, first off, science isn't about being right. It's about trying to approximate our understanding of nature to the best of our ability. But when when we're talking about this absolute idea that we call being right, I struggle to figure out how to engage with that effectively, because it kind of it's kind of incongruent with a scientific worldview. It's really difficult to work in that
Yeah, but
to work through that.
science has value outside of being right. Science's value is not
Science
intrinsic.
science like what do you think, what kind of value do you think science has if it's not right? Like,
I'm not saying it's not right. I'm saying it has value outside of being right. So
well,
like
what's that value to you?
it tells us more about things that we can then add to, right? So like if if I now know that like I need oxygen to fill my lungs to go into my bloodstream so that I can continue um, living, then like I that actually improves my life a um, in a quantable way. So or a quantifiable way. Um, if if I can learn about what do you call it? if I can learn about global warming and find out more about like how to stop the end of the world from coming so that future generations can continue to live, like not not contributing to the end of my to the end of my species has value, right? But like if if science can tell me like I don't know that like the sky is blue, like well, it doesn't really have much value to me. I can call the sky whatever I want and now it is that thing. Like if I start calling the sky green and everybody else starts calling the sky green, then the sky's just green. I don't care what science has to say about it. It's just green now. So like there is value outside of just science and just being right or just knowing things. There has to be something that it affects, some sort of outcome to that knowledge that gives it value. And that is the case with all, especially with political beliefs, where most of it is ideological, most of it has to do with in group bias and, things like that. Like most of the things that we would consider to be like alt writers. We know that the most common reason that people fall down the alt right pipeline is that the people that, like, in their lowest moments, the people who had open arms and gave them community when they needed it most were the alt writers, right? So, like, we know this. We know this is how people end up there. This, like, it's it's all right in front of our faces, showing that like this is what people value most. Being right has less value than having family or having friends or having a place to sleep at night or like all of those other things are a million times more important than whether or not you're right. So you have to not, like, one of the hardest parts about doing like what I do is that you have to give them reason to believe what it is you're trying to convince them of.
This is what scientists often run into, especially the publicly funded ones, is um like trying having to convince like the public or the politicians that their research is worth funding,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's just really frustrating, man.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, and that's why you guys need somebody like me to explain to them like how this will get them votes or how this like this is why lobbying exists. This is why lobbying is one of the most valuable things in the world because it is what gets things done. Without lobbying, most things, whether valuable or not, would never get done, making rhetoric more valuable than anything.
Still don't like it.
It seems like most
I
of
don't
the
think I ever
time,
will.
it seems like most of the time when we have these arguments, you come into it not liking it and leave fairly convinced, but still not liking it.
Um, I
So, like,
mean,
as a Christian, when it
yeah.
comes to a lot of my beliefs, a lot of these things are inconvenient truths for me, right? Um, but they don't stop me from believing them. And then also, they don't stop me from passing that information on to others. Um, but I take like my feelings, my ideological views, my um, what would be valuable to me. I take all of that out of it and try to find ways to make it valuable to others. I am insanely rare. um, I I can't make other people like me, right? Which is
Mm.
why like I can see so much value in rhetoric because if I can see like the truth, then like it should be really easy for most everybody else, right? Like if I can be convinced of this, it should be super easy for most everybody else. But it's not. Most people have these hardcore attachments to the other things. And so in the end, if all that matters is that we get things done, then like that's all that matters. Then that's just kind of the end of it. Like if you can see some good in like getting free healthcare, right? In the United States. Um and what's stopping most people from wanting free healthcare is that they think it's going to be too expensive. Um well, then like maybe we just lie to everybody and tell them it's not going to be too expensive. In the end, we get the free healthcare. Now, did we lie to people? Yeah. Is that wrong and immoral? Yeah, probably. But did we save a bunch of lives by doing it? Yeah, most likely.
Well, that doesn't really make sense. Like, I'm not following that analogy because how the hell can free healthcare be too expensive? It's free
It's not free. You still pay for it.
through taxes, I guess,
Right.
if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. So, like, that wouldn't, I don't think that would be considered a lie. Like, if people think free healthcare is too expensive, right? And you're like, okay, let's just lie to them and tell them it's not. Like, what if it isn't too expensive? In which
Well, no,
case,
no, 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 no,
you're not
no, no.
lying to them.
In the
They're just wrong.
hypothetical, it is too expensive. Like, in the hypothetical, it's definitely too expensive. We know it's too expensive. But, like, whether or not that's the truth, whether or not that's like a fact, doesn't really matter. It doesn't have much value in this case. What's more valuable is whether or not people get the health care that they need, right?
Mm, like I don't know. That just feels kind of like a convoluted hypothesis, or not hypothesis, hypothetical. I'm kind of struggling to wrap my head around that one.
Why?
Uh, it's like if you want to stick to the idea that free healthcare is definitely too expensive, then like kind of what kind of
When I say
negative
too expensive, like this is all subjective, right? So say people like draw a line. It's not going to make them go bankrupt, but they don't think that this is like an amount that they would feel comfortable paying, right? They think I don't want to send that much money to the government, or I don't want to pay that much for other people to use for healthcare, right? Like it's more about like just
I wasn't
it's
thinking of that way. I was thinking
like no, they're
too
not going to go
expensive as
bankrupt and die. Like
yeah. Like yeah, okay. If we're talking about like how if like the majority of people feel it's too expensive for them and then you just tell them no, it's not. I I mean, I guess.
my
But
point
then you're
is like in the hypotheticals there are times when the truth just doesn't have much value. Like um like the truth can come secondary to other truths that you find to be more valuable. And so what when while you're considering like okay, well what I'm telling them right now has the facts and logic behind it, so therefore they should believe it. Well, there are other facts that they find more valuable, like my parents won't invite me back to Christmas this year if I'm vocal about this belief, or my girlfriend will break up with me, or the people at work won't invite me to parties anymore, or, you know.
well, fuck, like
So, again, the overall point is that
I mean,
rhetoric needs to be used to join those two things together. You want to take the facts and logic, but you're not just convincing them that you have facts and logic. You're also convincing them that this is good for them, that this has value to it. I have all of the props turned off, so like normally we'll see them like throwing rockets around and all sorts of stuff and putting cigars in each other's mouths and shooting each other and stuff. But they've been driving me crazy with this freaking crap. Like it's so distracting. So I turned them all off. So that's why they're all acting really weird.
hmm, yeah, I just I so you to be clear, like, do you think you don't think that there's an intrinsic value to the truth? Is that what you're getting at?
Um yeah, no, because like an intrinsic value to the truth would say that like all truth is just as valuable as any other truth. And I just,
No, it would say that there is like a baseline non-zero value to the truth.
yeah, no. I would say
Not that
sometimes,
not
it,
that not that every single truth has the exact same value as others.
I, I, yeah, no, I don't think so. I think that sometimes truth can have no value whatsoever,
Okay. I
and
mean,
even negative value.
yeah, I mean, truth can have a negative value in certain social contexts. But like if you take it if you take truth out of the social context, right?
Hmm.
Any given fact of nature, right,
Yeah.
has an intrinsic value to it that is like it's just
I mean, maybe it
the
does.
truth.
I mean, I don't mind giving it to you just because I don't really care. Like, outside of social, uh,
Yeah, this is what bugs me is people not caring about the intrinsic truth of value or value of truth is people it's when people it's because people don't care about the intrinsic value of truth that we find ourselves in this current social climate where like people are accepting quote unquote alternative facts and all this bullshit.
well, my point is that it just doesn't really matter anymore at that point. Like, without the social
It does
aspect.
matter. It does matter. It matters so much, and it matters even more now than it did before because we have to educate these people and teach them or even reteach them about the intrinsic value of truth and evidence and logic and well reasoned arguments. It's like it's the devaluing of those things that is one of the big reasons why America has turned to the anti-intellectualism that it has.
Again,
Like,
I don't think that's true.
well,
I think that the social aspects are are actually factually more important.
like okay, I'm not saying that there's no context in which the social aspects in life are more important than
I know you're
whether or
not saying
not.
that.
Yeah, I'm saying that there's always a value to telling the truth.
Again, you can say there's always a value. That's fine. I can give you that because it just doesn't matter in the end. That doesn't change anything that I've said already.
Yeah, but that
As long as the other things are more valuable, that's all that matters in the end.
that's literally the attitude that like that's I don't know.
Perception is reality.
I just feel like that's the attitude that has led led us down the path of anti-intellectualism.
Okay.
I feel like that's the attitude that has fueled like the climate denier culture that has pervaded like conservative politics for 5 decades, you know?
Yeah, it is.
And I mean, to tie it all back in, like that kind of attitude, rhetoric is the only thing that can support that kind of attitude. Because
No.
facts and logic sure don't.
Again, there are things more important than facts and logic. You keep doing this. You keep regressing back after we, like,
Well, maybe I disagree with that. I don't know.
in a person's, like, you're looking at things from a very, like, outside analytical perspective. And that's not how people actually work in reality. Like, they're people are individuals, right? Like, they have their own lives. They have things that they've worked for. They've had relationships that they've built. They have so much more that on a daily basis they aren't thinking about what science thinks about their relationships. They don't care what politics has to say about their relationships. Their relationships are way more important to them than anything else. I mean, the saying is, it's not what you know, but who you know. And nobody questions that, because that's like a factual thing. Like, you will always get farther based on who you know than what you know. And people are not willing to compromise their relationships just to be right and alone.
Mm. Like,
And I don't know that anybody should recommend that either. I don't think it's a good recommendation to say, "Hey, go ahead and just cut off your family and cut off, like, all of the uh, people in your life that you love so that you can be right," because that just leads to people killing themselves. Like, I don't care that you're right if you committed suicide in the end. Like, there are some things that are more valuable than others. And that's like the thing that I'm trying to get you to, like, come away from this with is
I
facts and
just,
logic.
I can think of so many ways that is the dangerous approach. Like,
It may be a dangerous approach, but it's also the only approach. There is
it's
no
it.
there is no other option.
There has to be, like, I mean, if you're,
Again, you're moralizing this though. Like,
I'm
you
not
have to
moralizing
have
it.
you are you're saying that, like, whether or not it's dangerous, whether or not it's good or bad, that what matters is that is the way it is. You have to be more pragmatic about this and just look at it for what it is and work within that. Like, you can convince people of all of the things that are true, but not by thinking that they're just going to know it's true and just thanks, Dave, for letting me know.
like, if you're a trans person, right,
Mm-hmm.
and your family doesn't believe that trans identity is legitimate, and your community doesn't believe that trans identity is legitimate,
Mm-hmm.
your your argument would be that the argument you're making would would say that that trans person should.
No,
Yes, it is.
no, it's not.
That's absolutely what your argument is saying.
I'm saying that if they find more value in their family than they would in their gender identity, then true, yeah, they should not transition then. Again, my point is that there are layers to what is valuable. You can say there's an intrinsic value to being right. That doesn't mean it's more valuable than anything else. And what's most valuable is what matters in all of these situations.
I mean,
What the hell does this guy have? Oh, it's a straight.
I think we're just going to fundamentally disagree on that one, Tom.
I You've already agreed to it though.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you have. You have
When
agreed that there are some things that are more valuable. You've already agreed to this.
I said that in certain contexts, there may be something about the social situation you're in that is more valuable than just straight up telling the truth,
Okay?
right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that means that there is no truth to the truth, no value to the truth. I
Again,
don't
I'm
think.
not saying there's no value to the truth.
Yeah,
I've said over and over there can
yeah,
be.
I know. I'm trying to lay out my position as best I can.
Okay.
And I don't think that means that um I don't think that means you should just abandon the truth. Like just like right like there's generally speaking I think that if we if individuals and if society um pursue the truth as a matter of their worldview, that's just healthier,
Okay, but
you
that's
know.
not the way things are. I'm making descriptive claims and you are making prescriptive claims. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No,
I'm telling you the way that things are. You're saying the way things should be. We're having two different conversations here. I'm not talking about the way that things should be. I'm just talking about the way that things are.
I
Does that make sense?
think you're talking about the way you think things are. I'm not sure you're right.
In what way? That people value other things over being right? What part do you think you disagree with?
So, I don't know. I'm just frustrated.
Again, you're not wrong in the way that things should be. You are correct. But we've already agreed that this is the way things are. That people find value in other things, or find more value in other things than being right. I swear if that's a freaking ace or a five, I'm gonna. Do not be an ace or a five. Thank you. Thank you, Mamma Mia. Fold them away, boys. Fold them away. Oh, hoo, hoo. So, like, we've already agreed on that point. There, people find values and find some things more valuable than the truth. And it's not a matter of whether or not you find more value in the truth than those other things. It's about whether or not people in reality find more value in the truth over social things. And so if we know that people find more value in social things than the truth, then we can't treat them as though they're just going to hear the truth and know it, or even care if they knew it. We have to treat them as they are in reality. So, like, I talk about this all the time. If I want to talk to conservatives about people being trans and, like, whether or not that identity is valid, right? Well, normally, one of the things that they'll say is like, well, that's the way things have always been, right? That's we've always done things this way, where gender and sex align. So obviously, that's something that they value, is keeping things the same as they've always been. So I'm going to talk to them in a way to where what I'm trying to convince them of meets that value, right? So I tell them, well, um, if we're talking about whether or not a trans person should go into the bathroom that they identify with, well, we've always looked at somebody to decide what gender they are, right? We look at them, they have a purse, they have high heels on, they have a dress on, they have long hair, they have makeup. That's a woman. Okay? Now, I have suspicions they might have a penis. And they're walking into the woman's bathroom. But at no point have we ever stopped somebody and checked their genitals to see what they are before they go into a bathroom. That's the way things always have been, buddy, to decide whether they were a man or a woman. And we've always let people go into the bathroom based on how they look.
Wait, you realize your gender identity is more than just
Yes, but
the way you look, right?
not to another person, not based on whether or not they go into that bathroom, right?
I mean,
To me, what pronouns I'm going to call you is going to be based on how you look.
well, pronouns you're calling someone should be based on what they identify as, regardless of how they look.
Kind of. I mean, there are identifiers to gender. So like as a um to accommodate somebody, yeah, sure. I will just call them by whatever pronouns they ask me to. But there are still lines drawn around these concepts, right? Like a concept can be malleable, it can change over time. But that doesn't mean that it just has no bounds whatsoever. Like, gender has actual qualifiers to it. But, anyways, that's off topic. So, I'm going to be explaining to them why my goal meets their values. So, like the first time we first met, I was convincing American Nacho of systemic racism, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same thing. I was able to take the things that he was saying and then convince him of systemic racism based on what it was that he was already telling me. Now, you can sit there on your high horse all day and say, well, I'm right, so I'm just going to tell you the facts. And that's great. Good job, KayODave. You're convincing absolutely nobody. Enjoy it. Meanwhile, people with rhetoric will be getting it done in the meantime. How do my lights keep turning on and off?
In your
Oh,
house?
that's right. I meant to come out with the freaking crap. I totally forgot. I meant to go over the bingo cards with everybody.
What's the bingo cards?
So we have tomfoolery bingo. On the bingo cards, um, we have a bunch of different things that are common for me to do on stream. And they're all like randomized, each person's is different, right? Then each time I do one of those things, you get to check that box. It's going to be on my website. So, uh, um, so let's see. So today's Monday. All right. So for the rest of this week, I'm going to try to put it on my website later today. And for the rest of this week, once you join the stream, that's when your bingo starts. Okay? Can't start before. And uh we'll have to like log what time you got here so that you can't just go like check off things that you weren't here for because you know other people checked it off. Then, if somebody wins, uh, let's see, three times this week, then I'll send them like a tomfoolery shirt or hat or something. So, rhetoric.
Oh, uh-oh.
Do we agree?
One moment. Okay, good. It was just on my end. Um,
That's not what you want. It's not the world that you want it to be, but it is necessary. It has value. Right?
I don't know. I have to think about it more.
Are you guys able to hear this guy? No, you can't hear him. Okay, good. This guy's got hella music playing in the background. Everybody's muted him.
I know exactly who I need to talk to about this, though, to
You just
help
talked to
me.
him.
Nope, not you. My professor, my physics professor.
Well, professors definitely use rhetoric. They use all sorts of analogies and hypotheticals and things like that to make things easier to comprehend. Because in the end, their only goal is to make sure that you're convinced of what it is that they're trying to teach you. My lenses are all blurry, and I don't think I have any wipes around. I normally keep a bunch like right here, just in case my glasses or something get nasty. Oh, that's much better. Well, after you talk to your professor, you'll get back to me, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Do you play poker at all?
No,
Really?
I can't play poker. Are you kidding me? I can't lie for shit.
Well, then you get VR poker. I keep forgetting I have to look farther down for the audience to see what it is that I'm playing.
All right. Yeah, during this whole conversation, my dog has been driving me nuts, so I'm gonna have to go and take care of her.
All right, man.
Ah, fucking Biden. Okay.
Did you get mad the other day when you got kicked off the panel?
Yes, I was quite upset with Prime.
Really?
Yeah.
You hadn't said anything the whole time.
Hmm?
You hadn't said anything
When you mean?
on the panel. You hadn't said anything. Like on the you hadn't been debating on the panel.
Did you watch the whole panel?
No, I mean just like in recent around the time when he kicked you, you hadn't been saying anything.
Yeah, like when Destiny showed up,
Uh huh.
like I didn't say I wasn't saying anything then, yeah.
Yeah.
As Destiny was there and he was taking up all the airspace.
Well, I mean, lots of other people were still talking. You just weren't
Yeah,
watching.
everyone who was on the side of that friggin' Prime Legendary guy was they all had lots to say. All of it was bullshit, but they had lots to say.
It, yeah. That's one of the things I was talking to Katarana about.
Yeah, no, I was one of the few on that panel who had been effectively pushing back against them, and then Destiny shows up and Prime kicks everyone, literally everyone who was pushing back.
Hmm.
So that was a textbook case of me trying to explain the facts of the matter. In this case, talking about biology,
Mm-hmm.
and and Gambit, Fnatic, and Prime Legendary just completely um, like taking nothing away from it.
Well, it was weird because like I don't think anybody except for Legendary were arguing that white people were um what did he say again?
Genetically inferior to black people.
Yes, I think Prime was the only one that was arguing that uh Prime
Uh,
Legendary,
Gam-
sorry, not
Gambit,
Prime
Gambit,
Fate.
and Fnatic, yeah, Gambit and Fnatic were effectively arguing that because they were running defense for Legendary, so they
I
were supporting his position.
yeah, from what I understand, they're just friends with him and
Yeah, I mean it's
they didn't actually like agree with anything he said, and from what I could tell, they kept just like
they
pretending
kept
to
uh,
reiterate what he was saying,
yeah well, they were
but while
obfuscating
changing it.
they were obfuscating his they were obfuscating his position in a way to try and make it seem like it was a
A palatable idea. Yeah.
palatable idea. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Um
which which was really fucking frustrating. Like
yeah.
at first, I I first used I absolutely had to the first thing I had to do was explain why biology did not support his position. That was the first thing I had to do.
Mhm.
And then I tried like the general pushback, but
Well, so
fucking
the I've had this argument with a number of people before, and what I was telling Kat earlier is that it's funny because normally I didn't see what he said, like what his argument was, but it seems as though um, the argument normally that I get is that black people or black women can have children of any like race. Like they all started with black people. That's where like black people were the first humans, and that everybody else comes from black people. And over time, we changed into different races that were crap. I'm blanking on the word again. What is it? Less than.
yeah, like that's all nonsense.
Is that what he was saying?
No, he was saying that no, he wasn't saying that. He was saying that black genes are superior to white genes. That's what he said, verbatim.
Right, but that's, again, this is the argument as to why black genes are superior to white genes. And they say
Um,
because they were the first humans, and that,
no,
like,
no, no. His argument was, um, he was saying that if you mix black genes and white genes, you get black genes.
I mean, that's not incorrect
It is
completely.
incorrect.
Not completely. Like, they
It's
have,
actually completely incorrect.
when it comes to the skin color, black genes are more dominant.
It's completely incorrect because first off, there's no such thing as black genes and there's no such thing as white genes. That's important. Um, Secondly, he said black genes are superior to white genes, and that black genes always are that yeah that they're superior to white genes, and biology and genetics has nothing to say about whether or not genes are superior to other genes. That's
Well,
also
yeah, you would have to put a
bullshit.
value on each gene, and you can't.
Yeah.
That's not something that
The thing,
science
yeah,
can do.
yeah. The thing Gambit tried to do was obfuscate by claiming that Legendary was actually talking about whether or not alleles are dominant or recessive. And so I had to explain what dominant meant, what recessive meant, what alleles were, and why none of that supported Prime Legendary's argument.
Well, anyways, most of the time their argument is that black people were the first people and that white people came later and as a lesser type of person. And so normally I'll say, hey, I don't like saying this, but I'm only explaining your argument back to you. White people came after black people and we changed. We were different. That doesn't make you superior to us. Actually, humans do not devolve, we only evolve. So if this is your argument, you're saying white people are a more evolved version of black people.
Yeah.
So if that's the argument you want to go with, be my
Uh,
guest. But
yeah. I mean, like, I see the rhetorical approach you're taking there.
yeah,
But like even that doesn't fly with like anything science has to say in the matter.
of course.
Like you're fighting bullshit with bullshit, which
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do.
yes.
All right. Love you, buddy.
But yeah, I love you too.
Have a good day.
I'll I'm gonna go get my dog to stop driving me crazy.
All right.
Okay,
Later.
bye.
There you go. Ladies and germs. Later, fools.